a volver a ver a mi niña muy pronto, entonces no estoy nada agobiado, estoy muy tranquilo, por favor. Si me dejáis paso.
¿Por qué estáis aquí? Cuéntanos.
Es por la custodia de tu hija, Ilia.
Por favor, tenemos que pasar.
Espera, Ilia.
Pero por favor.
Nieto, tú
Pero
estás
por
como un descanso, ¿cómo estás tú también, personalmente?
¿Cómo te encuentras
¿Cómo te encuentras, Ilia?
Cuando salga, tal vez.
¿Cuál es tu prioridad ahora mismo, Ilia?
Mi prioridad es mi hija, mis hijos, mi familia, esa es mi prioridad.
This ends with a courtroom door slamming shut and a reputation cracking in real time. And if you think that's exaggeration, then stay right here, because I'm snapping this thing backward hard, because minutes before this fallout, nobody believed the balance of power would tilt this way. Nobody expected the narrative to flip, and now Giorgina is the one unraveling, while Ilia Topuria is standing there, calm, surgical, and terrifyingly prepared. Nah, this can't be real. Except it is, and it's only getting darker the deeper you look.
These allegations are entirely unfounded. The truth is not a matter of opinion, it is a matter of evidence. All relevant evidence has been carefully preserved and documented, including audio recordings, written communications, witness statements, and video material. This evidence has been submitted to appropriate judicial authorities in order to pursue legal action for attempted extortion, falsification of evidence, misappropriation of funds and personal property, and multiple threats.
Here's where the shock hits your chest, because all week the whispers were that Ilia was cornered, that the court would lean emotional, not evidential, that silence meant guilt. And then boom, the filings land, the hearing turns administrative, and suddenly the story everyone was fed starts leaking oil. Because when Ilia says he has recordings, messages, witnesses, videos, not vibes but receipts, that's not defense, that's a warning shot. And someone in this story did not expect him to pull that trigger today.
Out of respect for my children and the ongoing legal proceedings, I will not be making any further public statements. I respectfully ask that speculation be avoided and that my family's privacy be honored during this sensitive time. The truth does not require volume, it requires facts.
You feel that curiosity clawing at you right now, because the question isn't what was said publicly. It's what hasn't been shown yet, because fighters don't talk about evidence unless they're ready to burn something down. And when Ilia frames himself as the one being targeted, the one allegedly extorted, the entire emotional script flips. And I'm telling you, someone is hiding something here. You can feel it in the way the language tightens. Too clean, too controlled, too deliberate to be panic.
And so you can understand even more so why he would want to step away and not focus on fighting or defending his title, because obviously there's a lot going on. It's extremely sad. It's I feel for everyone involved. I feel for his family. I feel for his kids. It's an awful situation.
Then the escalation hits, because Spanish media runs wild. Headlines scream violence, and Ilia steps in and calls one of them flat out false, forces a correction. And that matters more than you think, because once a headline collapses, the rest start wobbling. And the hearing everyone thought was explosive turns out to be about a child's travel, not guilt, not charges, not cuffs, and you could hear the collective pause when people realized they might have been dragged into a narrative too fast.
They have been excellent. We have a special connection. I have understanding without having to give a lot of explanation, understanding from them. From the very first moment, they have extended their hand. I have been offered their support in any time I needed it. So I don't really know. I'm very happy for the support I've received from them, for the understanding, and also happy about the steps that they have to take.
This is where the emotion spikes, because children are involved, months without seeing his daughter, a son watching from the sidelines of a grown-up war, and suddenly this isn't a fighter dodging a fight. This is a father fighting a system with paper instead of fists. And if you don't think that changes a man, then you've never watched pressure carve someone sharper instead of breaking them. And yeah, say it. Fighters lie, but do liars bring this much documentation to the table?
Obviously, you just saw Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim title. Earlier, Topuria posted, "I'm dealing with some personal problems, so I'm not gonna fight the first quarter." So the winner of Gaethje versus Paddy will be the interim title, and then they will face Topuria.
And then there's that sudden pause, that quiet beat nobody wants to sit in, because Giorgina's camp says, wait, there's more, claims evidence of their own, claims suffering, claims truth will expose everything. And that's when my stomach turns. Because when both sides promise revelation, it means this thing is nowhere near done, and one of them is bluffing, or worse, both think they're holding the ace, and courts don't care about confidence, they care about proof.
I had to dig into this. I guess I misunderstood. Ilia Topuria made headlines. My belief through the headlines is that Ilia was walking away from the UFC championship belt, thus elevating Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett to undisputed title.
Now, here comes the new threat. Because the UFC doesn't stop spinning just because a champion's life is on fire, and while Ilia's world is collapsing inward, the lightweight division is being reassembled without him, interim belts whispered into existence, contenders circling like sharks, and make no mistake, titles don't wait for trauma. And every week out of the cage is a week someone else writes your legacy for you, whether you like it or not.
The story is that this made headlines for something that we were already told a couple of weeks ago, and there is no escalation from that, meaning Ilia Topuria is not vanquishing or having stripped from him the title.
You want another shock? Because Dana White didn't explode. Didn't threaten, didn't strip, which should scare you more than anger, because patience from the UFC is never free. It's strategic, it's conditional, and when an organization goes quiet, it usually means they're letting time solve the problem for them, and time in this sport is undefeated. Ask anyone who blinked and lost their belt without losing a fight.
The UFC doesn't exactly have the greatest track record of giving a shit if you hit a woman or not. John Jones, heavyweight champion of the world, arrested for beating his fiance. Arrested for it. Not accused of, arrested for it. And he remained the champion until he retired.
The curiosity gap opens wider when you hear other fighters picking sides without evidence, firing moral missiles on social media, calling Ilia names they can't take back. And I'm sitting here thinking, nah, slow down, because history is brutal to people who rush judgment, and there's a reason courts move slower than timelines. And it's because truth doesn't trend, it survives, and some of these hot takes are going to age like milk in the sun.
Ultimately, with Ilia, he carries himself like a champion. You know, he's done it. You know, he's done a good job marketing himself. He hasn't been trash like, you know, in terms of some other people that we've seen across, you know, over the last couple of years. He's done a good job. So I'm not going to sit here and just throw heat at him and throw shade at him. I think he's got a good chance of proving, if he seems convinced he can prove her wrong or prove the allegations to be incorrect, then good for him.
Then comes the emotional whiplash, because while critics scream career over, others quietly say, why would he even come back undefeated? Rich, belts already conquered, and that's dangerous talk, because when a champion starts hearing that maybe walking away is easier, that maybe the cage isn't worth the cost. The sport doesn't lose a fighter, it loses an ending, and unfinished endings are where myths rot and rumors thrive.
As of now, there's no real timeline set in place. He spoke to ESPN Deportes about that, about his decision to walk away. Here's what he had to say, and I'll read the subtitles for you in case you're just listening to the audio.
Here's the pause again. The one that makes your skin crawl, because parallels start forming with Conor, absences, chaos, noise drowning out clarity, and every time people said he was done, they were wrong until they weren't, and that's the nightmare scenario here. Not a loss, not a verdict, but erosion. Time chewing away sharpness while the world debates morality instead of matchups, and Ilia is stuck watching it happen in real time.
As I've communicated, I'm going through some personal problems. I do not have an exact date when everything will be fixed. I hope that as soon as possible, as soon as it is solved, I will be ready to go back. In the octagon, I prioritize at this time the welfare of my family, of my children, my own. So as soon as everything is solved, I will be back to the octagon to give it the show that everyone deserves.
Now the threat mutates because Giorgina files more reports, talks about harassment, anxiety, fear, and I'm not dismissing that for a second, but when legal pressure stacks on both sides this fast, it means scorched earth is on the table, and scorched earth leaves no winners, only documents and damage. And somewhere in all this noise, a truth is being bent, stretched, maybe buried, and yeah, I said it, something here does not line up clean.
And then he'll get back on track, and it's not going to be easy though. Like, people think like, oh, it's going to be done, it's going to swipe it underneath the rug. But the problem is though, is that there's time away from training, not just that, the mental game. He's not what he will be when he comes back, what he was when he left.
The stakes keep rising because January hearings turn into spring consequences, and summer deadlines loom for a division that doesn't care about court calendars. And if Ilia can't return soon, the word interim quietly disappears, replaced by undisputed, and that's how champions vanish without ever being beaten. And tell me that doesn't feel like a betrayal of everything fighting is supposed to represent.
Will he come back being the same guy? Probably not. It's going to take him time to get his mental back on track. This sport is very mental. Everything is about it is mental. You know, whether it's the fitness, whether it's the conditioning, the diet, the nutrition, making sure that you're financially stable with your at home. You know, your trainers are all taken care of. Like, there's so much that goes into it.
Another pause. Because even if Ilia clears his name legally, the damage clock doesn't rewind. Sponsors hesitate. Fans fracture, narratives calcify, and you don't walk back into the octagon as the same man who left it. You walk back heavier, sharper, angrier, or not at all. And every outcome from here changes the division, the culture, and how accusations are weaponized or resisted going forward.
Ilia Topuria's fighting career, it's done. And it's a shame to see it end this way. Everything going on right now outside of his fighting career, personal life, that's big things going on in this man's life. Why would he need to come back?
And here's the final uneasy spike. Because this story isn't ending with a gavel or a fight announcement. It's hanging right now, vibrating, waiting on evidence drops, responses, counters, leaks, and one wrong move from either side could detonate the whole thing. So don't get comfortable. Don't assume you know who's right, because the next update could flip this entire narrative again. And when it does, someone's world is going to implode on camera.
He has all the money in the world, double champion, undefeated. But what a career he's had if it is done. I mean, just knocked out Charles Oliveira and went up to 155. Finished Max Holloway. Finished Alexander Volkanovski. And what a rise he came on since fighting Bryce Mitchell back in 2021.
I keep replaying the way this whole thing shifted from fight week hype to legal warfare because MMA fans are conditioned to read body language in a cage, not affidavits on a desk, and yet here we are dissecting tone, timing, and silence like it's a 5-round chess match. And every quiet move from Ilia feels intentional, like he's choosing when to speak, because he knows once certain words are out, there's no walking them back.
I mean, what he has done and how he's ultimately changed the sport, but the weird thing about it is this not parallel to Conor McGregor? And look what Conor McGregor has seen. I mean, 2 years ago, we were talking about the same thing. After he pulled out against Michael Chandler, it's like, is this guy done? And what Ilia came out said, I'm glad he came out and talked about it.
What messes with my head is how fast public opinion crowned a villain before the process even warmed up. Because I've watched this sport long enough to know that mobs move faster than facts. And once a narrative sets, people don't want truth. They want confirmation, and Ilia stepping into that storm without yelling, without melting down, without disappearing completely, that either means discipline at an elite level or a confidence that comes from knowing something we don't yet.
You do wonder, at some point, will they decide to make that interim belt the actual belt if he's not going to come back anytime soon? I think I don't think that they're going to be forced to do that for the January event. We'll see what kind of timeline he's on, how long this is going to play out. But if it's by next summer, perhaps they make that call.
I can't ignore how this situation exposes a brutal truth about MMA fame, because the same fans who scream warrior and lion when you're winning will turn prosecutor the second chaos enters your life, and suddenly your knockout reel means nothing compared to screenshots and headlines. And that whiplash alone can break fighters who were built to survive fists, not public judgment layered with legal ambiguity.
And perhaps that's why a guy like Arman doesn't seem too bothered by what's going on. These things can play out in many different ways, and you're on the outside and then you're on the inside, and everything changes in an instant.
there's also this uncomfortable thought that keeps creeping in, that the sport itself almost benefits from the drama, because controversy keeps names alive even when fights can't, and that's a dangerous ecosystem, because it rewards noise over nuance. And I wonder how many fighters are watching this thinking twice before ever letting the public see their private lives again.
Because there have been some rather strange things that have happened to him as of late. I mean, the number one contender for his belt, Arman Tsarukyan, ends up not getting a shot at the belt, has to go out and do another fight, which officially gets named the number one contender's fight, of which Tsarukyan wins, but he is not fighting for the belt. Paddy the Baddy versus Justin Gaethje are going to go ahead and fight. Though I don't know if either one of them has ever asked to fight the other, as much as they just wanted the opportunity and the...
When I think about Ilia's fighting style, the patience, the calculated pressure, the way he sets traps instead of chasing chaos, I see the same pattern here. Because he's not swinging wildly at accusations, he's circling them. And that scares me more than denial ever would, because silence paired with preparation is rarely accidental in people wired to compete at the highest level.
But he did also say that he wants to finish his MMA story and then go into boxing, but that's a lot of steps away, and I don't think we need to get into that too much.
At the same time, I keep reminding myself that courtrooms aren't cages, and dominance in one doesn't guarantee victory in the other, because emotion carries weight there in ways judges can't fully ignore. And if this turns into a credibility war instead of a fact war, then no amount of discipline will protect anyone involved from long-term damage.
So just a very unfortunate situation for someone who, you know, was on this meteoric rise, and will hopefully for him, if everything works out in his favor, be able to continue that rise. But obviously this is a huge obstacle on a personal level that he's going to have to overcome, and wish everyone involved the best, and hopefully it can be resolved sooner rather than later.
Another layer that bothers me is how other fighters insert themselves into this, because locker rooms talk, managers talk, camps whisper, and when opinions start leaking without evidence, it poisons the well. And later, when clarity arrives, nobody wants to admit they spoke too soon. So they just move on and let reputations stay cracked. I also think about the division itself, because lightweight has always thrived on momentum. And with Islam, Charles, Ahmed, and others circling, the absence of one dominant champion reshapes everything, and titles don't just represent skill, they represent stability. And right now, stability feels fragile, like one bad update could send matchmaking into chaos. There's a human cost here that gets lost when we talk legacy and belts, because kids don't care about rankings, they care about presence, and no matter how this resolves, time missed is time gone. And that kind of loss doesn't show up on Sherdog, but it follows people forever, shaping how they fight, how they love, and how they trust systems meant to protect them. I keep circling back to how unfinished this feels, because every statement sounds provisional, like everyone is bracing for the next document drop, the next interview, the next leak, and that limbo is exhausting. And exhaustion is where mistakes happen, where someone overshares, missteps, or reacts emotionally instead of strategically. From a fan perspective, it forces an uncomfortable self-check, because it's easy to demand transparency while consuming every rumor, and harder to sit with uncertainty without filling the gaps with assumptions. And this saga is a mirror showing how quickly we turn real lives into episodic content without caring how the season ends for the people inside it. What really haunts me is the possibility that even the truth, when it arrives, won't satisfy anyone, because by then sides are chosen, emotions invested, and apologies feel hollow compared to the damage already done. And that's the quiet tragedy of public disputes. Resolution rarely restores what escalation destroyed. I also wonder how Ilia himself processes this, because fighters rely on structure, camps, routines, measurable goals, and legal chaos is the opposite of that. Unpredictable, slow, and invasive, and staying sharp while your life is dissected externally requires a mental toughness that makes 5-round wars look simple by comparison. There's a lesson forming here for the sport, whether it wants it or not, about how quickly narratives can weaponize morality and how organizations, media, and fans need to slow down before turning allegations into verdicts. Because once that line is crossed, there's no appeals process in the court of public opinion. Even if Ilia returns and defends his belt, this chapter will follow him, woven into every promo, every chant, every comment section, and that permanence is terrifying, because fighters already carry enough ghosts from inside the cage without adding unresolved stories from outside it. I find myself uneasy not because I think I know who's right, but because I know how often certainty arrives too late, and how rarely the loudest voices are the most accurate. And that gap between noise and truth is where real damage lives. As this drags on, I expect pressure to build from every angle, legal, promotional, personal, and that convergence is where something breaks. Because no one can absorb infinite stress, and when cracks form, they don't always appear where you expect them. What keeps me watching is that sense that one piece is missing. One document, one recording, one testimony that reframes everything. And until that surfaces, every confident take feels premature, like celebrating a finish before the ref steps in. I don't think this story is heading toward closure anytime soon, and that's the unsettling part, because unresolved tension breeds speculation, and speculation hardens into belief, and belief rarely yields easily even when confronted with facts. So I'm left here, uneasy, skeptical, alert, knowing that the next update could either calm the storm or rip it open wider. And until then, the only honest position is discomfort, because pretending certainty right now feels like the most dangerous move of all.